The ballroom was filled with laughter, golden chandeliers throwing glittering light across marble floors, but in one corner stood a little girl, small and fragile, her hands trembling over the polished keys of a grand piano. Her clothes were plain, her shoes scuffed, and yet her eyes carried a quiet determination that seemed to pierce through the grandeur around her. The laughter of wealthy guests rang like cruel bells in her ears, and the booming voice of the host, a tall, confident millionaire in a tailored suit, had just declared mockingly, "Play something for us, little one. If you can truly impress me, I'll adopt you." The crowd chuckled as if it were a joke, but to the little girl, those words were not a game. They were a doorway to the life she had been praying for. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the power of compassion, then please take a moment to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Your support helps us spread these stories that remind the world what truly matters. The girl's name was Anna, just 7 years old, but her life had been harder than most could imagine. She had been abandoned as a toddler and shuffled between foster homes where neglect and hunger became her constant companions. The piano was her secret escape. She had discovered it in a dusty corner of an old orphanage, where broken toys and forgotten furniture gathered. Her fingers had found their way to the keys almost instinctively, pressing them one by one until a sound, imperfect but beautiful, filled the emptiness around her. From that moment, music became her language, the only way she could pour out the feelings she was too young to put into words. Now, here she was, standing in front of men and women who saw her as little more than a spectacle. Her heart pounded, and she wondered if she even deserved to sit at the piano in this glittering room. The millionaire who had spoken those words, his name was Alexander Gray, was known for his arrogance as much as his wealth. He wore success like armor, always amused by the desperation of those beneath him. He had only meant to tease her, to entertain his guests with a show of cruelty disguised as humor. But Anna didn't see it that way. For her, it was a chance. As her small hands hovered above the keys, she remembered the countless nights she had spent practicing with nothing but moonlight to guide her. She remembered how the nuns at the orphanage would sometimes hush her because she played too late, but she couldn't stop. Music was the only thing that made her feel alive. And now, with everyone watching, her soul demanded to be heard. At first, her fingers stumbled. A wrong note echoed, and someone in the crowd laughed. Alexander leaned back in his chair, smirking, but then something shifted. Anna closed her eyes, shutting out the glittering chandeliers, the judgmental eyes, and the cruel chuckles. She imagined herself back at the orphanage, alone with the piano, and let her heart lead her. The melody that flowed was not from sheet music or training, it was raw, unfiltered emotion, a song that told of loneliness, longing, and a fragile hope that refused to die. The room began to quiet. The laughter faded, replaced by a hush that spread like a ripple across the crowd. One by one, even the most skeptical guests fell silent as Anna's music wove its spell. Her small body swayed with the notes, her eyes still closed, and the sound that filled the room was unlike anything they had ever heard. It wasn't perfect, there were tiny mistakes, uneven rhythms, but the purity of her heart poured through every key she touched. Alexander's smirk faltered. He leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the little girl who had dared to turn his mocking challenge into something extraordinary. For the first time in years, he felt something stir deep inside him, something he thought he had buried under wealth, power, and pride. Memories of his own childhood came rushing back, a time when his mother had played the piano for him before she passed away. He had locked those memories away, convincing himself that vulnerability was weakness. But Anna's music broke through the walls he had built. When the final note lingered in the air, the silence in the room was overwhelming. No one clapped, no one dared speak. All eyes were on the little girl who had just turned a cruel game into a moment of truth. She opened her eyes slowly, as if waking from a dream, and looked directly at Alexander. For a moment, she wasn't a scared orphan, she was a brave soul demanding to be seen. Alexander's throat tightened. He wanted to laugh again, to dismiss what had just happened, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he found himself rising to his feet, his eyes burning with emotions he couldn't control. The room erupted into applause, but Alexander barely heard it. All he could see was Anna, standing there with her hands still resting on the piano, waiting for an answer. The crowd expected him to continue the joke, to toss out another line and entertain them. But Alexander was no longer in the mood for laughter. In that moment, he realized how empty his life had become. He had money, power, and influence, but he had no family, no warmth, nothing real to hold on to. And here was this little girl who had just reminded him of the beauty of love, of pain, of hope. Anna didn't know if he meant what he had said before, but she held onto it with all her might. For her, adoption meant safety, love, belonging, everything she had never truly had. She stood there, vulnerable, waiting. Alexander walked toward her, each step heavy with the weight of his pride crumbling. When he finally reached her, he knelt down so his eyes were level with hers. In a voice unsteady but sincere, he whispered, "You've given me something no amount of money could ever buy. From this day forward, you're not alone anymore." Tears welled in Anna's eyes, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe. The applause grew louder as the guests realized they had just witnessed something unforgettable, but for Anna and Alexander, the world had shrunk to just the two of them. He wrapped his arms around her gently, and she clung to him as if afraid he might disappear. The story didn't end there. Adoption is never simple, it requires time, patience, and commitment. Alexander faced questions from friends and ridicule from those who thought he had gone soft. But he didn't care. For the first time in his life, he had a purpose beyond wealth. Anna, too, had to adjust. She carried scars from her past, fears that didn't vanish overnight, but slowly, with Alexander's unwavering support, she began to heal. The piano remained her sanctuary, but now it was no longer a lonely one. She played for him, and sometimes, he would sit beside her, awkwardly pressing keys until they both burst into laughter. Months turned into years, and the bond between them grew unbreakable. Alexander discovered that true wealth was not measured by numbers in a bank account, but by the love you give and the lives you touch. Anna discovered that even the most broken hearts can find family in the most unexpected places. Together, they built a new story, one of hope, redemption, and music that would echo through their lives forever. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Stories like these remind us all that no act of kindness, no moment of compassion, is ever wasted. And before we close, I'd love to hear from you. If you believe that love can truly change lives, drop a comment below with the words, "Love always wins." Because in the end, that is what this story proves, no matter how broken the past, no matter how cold